Fantastic. I am Peter Fraser, co-chair with Heather Flaherty of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force. We welcome you here today for our meeting of May 12th, 2025. And before we begin, I would like to read the land acknowledgement statement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. All right, well, we have a good packed agenda today, and the first item is for us to review our motions and votes, and the only thing that we need to vote on today is the first item. So I'm curious, Jill, do we have a quorum?
We do, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so this is the steering committee recommendation to sunset the Crisis Stabilization Facility Committee. And I'd like to give you just a little bit of background on this. For I'm not sure how many years, but the IPRTF had a subcommittee, a subcommittee that was focused on the Ann Deacon Center, the Crisis Stabilization Center, and would meet, as I remember, once every 2 months to discuss. It was led by Perry Mowry of the Health Department. It was always an interesting meeting, but with Perry's retirement and Melora would have had to take over this this committee, it seemed like the Ann Deacon Center being open and well engaged, it was probably unnecessary for us to continue to devote that sort of time and everybody's time to it. So we were either going to decide to expand the charter of that committee or to sunset it. At our last steering committee meeting, we decided that we would like to sunset it. There was a vote of 6-0 to do so, with 1 abstention. And so it comes to a vote here today. And Jill, do you have that motion in front of us so somebody could see if they want to make that motion?
Yes, it's in the packet. Give me a moment to share here.
Thank you.
Sorry, 1 second. That's the wrong.
Basically, while she's looking for it, it says that we recommend to sunset that that committee.
Hey, Peter, I'll read the motion.
Okay, thank you.
I move that we sunset the crisis stabilization. Wait a minute. Yeah. I'll move that we sunset the Crisis Stabilization Committee and encourage quarterly reporting from the Pioneer Human Services, Compass Health, and County Health and Community Health Service Department.
I'll second that.
Great. And is there any discussion? The one piece of that I could enlighten you with is that we are getting reports from Hannah Fisk from Health, and she's doing a great job with that. I think we just received our first, and so we'll we'll make sure that we circulate those to the IPRTF. Dan Hamill.
Yeah, I just want to, sorry, I've got a kind of a shaky Wi-Fi, so I'm gonna leave the video off for a minute here. But where do the reports live? Do they come into the behavioral health committee? Do they go to the steering, broader task force? Just kind of curious as to process.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dan. I don't think that we've entirely resolved that. In fact, I have an idea that it would be good, instead of every time that they come out, they get you all get another email in your inbox. It would be good to gather reports quarterly and send them out at once, or even better yet, make them part of a packet. So if there's any discussion on preferences, we can have that. But I do want to make sure that our inboxes do not get too full with individual reports. Okay, unless there's anything else, let's take a vote. All in favor of this motion, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Let's move on to the next thing, which is I'm really pleased to be hearing from Julia Garrett from Village Reach today. And she's got an update for us on her work. And Julia,
Yeah, great,
would
thank
you
you.
like to go ahead? Thank you.
And I know it's a packed agenda, so please feel free to say, okay, wrap it up, if I'm encroaching on time. But yes, hi, everyone. As Peter mentioned, I'm Julia Gret. I'm a consultant from Village Reach, and I've been working closely with many of you on the call around developing the evaluation and performance measurement plan for the Justice Project. So I wanted to share an update with you all today on where things are and kind of where they're going. And then if we have time, kind of open up for some dialogue about some of the things I'm currently working on. So I am hopeful that you're able to see my screen. And are you seeing what says theory of change?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So yeah, where things stand. So as of the end of last week, a draft version of the evaluation and performance measurement plan was submitted or shared with Dean. And so that's what I have showing right now. It is not letting me zoom out. There we go, apologies. And so I was just going to kind of, at a very high level, show you what's in there for now. And then share kind of what the immediate next steps are to move this forward. So as was shared in the packet, this is a theory of change, which is just kind of showing the logical pathway between the intervention and the desired outcomes that is intended to capture kind of the Justice Project as a whole, which, as you're all aware, it's a very large project spanning 15 projects and different systems and sectors and whatnot. So there's a lot on this slide, but intentionally to capture everything. And so this is, moving through the fact that the Justice Project has these strategies and corresponding projects. And then in this column here where it says to reach these definitions of success, which is at kind of the operational level for that first strategy, and then gets into systems, services, and facility level goals. These are all things that have been discussed and have received feedback from those on JPOP. So some of you on this call, these will look familiar. And so we've incorporated the feedback, updated them, and these definitions of success, are kind of what you could think of as maybe more of an intermediate outcome, which will then lead to these larger, longer term outcomes, which have also been discussed and received input from JPOP. So kind of those 4 big outcomes are reducing the number of jail bookings, shortening the average length of jail stay, increasing connections to care upon jail release, and lowering recidivism rates. And all of that is to lead to the larger impact of increased health and safety in Whatcom County. And in this bottom corner here, you'll see a small box, and I'm guessing the font is small, so apologies, mentioning communities of focus. So also in discussion with JPOP, it was raised wanting to be able to ideally look at these outcomes disaggregated by these communities of focus, which are people of color, as well as those who are experiencing behavioral health issues. And so, as I'm assuming most of you are aware on this call as well, the main framework being used is results-based accountability. So asking the questions of how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anyone better off? And there's kind of two levels that you can look at, which is performance accountability and population accountability. And it's important to note that, majority of what is being suggested here falls under the performance accountability. And I'll get down to that. Yeah. So in terms of the levels of evaluation, majority are under performance accountability. So that's both the process evaluation, which is exploring what did we do and how well did we do it. So that's would be looking specifically at the 15 projects, which this would tell us, how implementation is progressing. And then performance accountability also captures an outcome evaluation, which is really exploring the is anyone better off question from the results-based accountability framework, and is focused on kind of outcomes for those who are involved in the behavioral health and criminal justice systems in Whatcom County, versus population accountability, which kind of falls more squarely under an impact evaluation. And that is looking at kind of those two big indicators that are more broadly looking at the population of Whatcom County. So is our health and safety increasing? And so, yes, and once again, small font. Let me see if I can zoom in at all. But what this is showing is basically taking that theory of change infographic or visual that I showed above and layering on top of it the different levels of evaluation that I just mentioned. So the process evaluation, as I said, is focused on these 15 projects. The outcome evaluation is focused on, what is labeled here as definitions of success, as well as these bigger outcomes. And then the impact evaluation would be looking at this level. And so where we're at right now is that we're not going to go into all of this detail. We don't have time today. But for the process evaluation, every project has a table in here that lays out potential indicators for how much did we do and how well did we do it. And then the same goes for the other levels. So like I said, it's a lot of details that we're not going to go through right now, but it gets into the outcome evaluation as well, in terms of different levels of looking at different levels of success and those larger outcomes of reduced jail bookings, average length of jail stay, connections to care, and recidivism rate. So where things stand in terms of what's next is I've just shared this with Dean, and the next steps are to get input from folks. If there are specific folks on this call who are particularly interested in reviewing and giving input, I'm definitely interested in that. I will also be following up with people who I have directly spoken with on specific projects to get their feedback on if the indicators are reflecting kind of the process element of their project, or if there's anything that needs to be changed. And then really what I'm kind of focusing on as I'm receiving feedback kind of simultaneously is digging into the data sources. Because, and I'm guessing this isn't a surprise to many of you, but there are a lot of indicators that we would like to measure that we don't currently have the data to measure. We don't have a data source or a system or the communication between them to effectively capture that. And so working to talk with people who are very well versed in all of the different data systems, seeing what's possible, and kind of filling out the remainder of these tables here, as well as then thinking through and putting together some mock-ups for the dashboard. I'll pause there in terms of, any kind of questions or comments from folks, and then also a time check, Peter, in terms of, I have more I can talk about, but like I said, I don't want to go over.
Julia, you're just fine right now. So thanks for leaving time for questions and thanks for that update. Dan Hamill, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of squinting at the screen because my
Yeah, sorry, it's
no,
small.
it's fine. You're good. Hey, I just want to have like a ground truthing on this. There's a lot of like high flying data here, a lot of 30,000 foot perspective, which I definitely appreciate, and I know that we've got to kind of guide that moving forward. However, I just want to be realistic. You've got multiple units of government, and you've got multiple branches of units of government. When you talk about courts, which is a separate jurisdiction that we don't have much in the way of authority over. And I guess my question is, like, what's the roadmap on how do we get there? Because there was a data point about Medicaid reimbursement, advocating for the highest levels of that at the state level, and given the landscape that we currently operate in over the next few years, when mission critical of getting this facility built and these facilities built and staffed, like, just I guess the question is how, like, how do we have like a how category of in the roadmap of how to get there?
No, that's a fantastic question. I think that touches on what I was saying in terms of we can be really in alignment and agree upon what exactly we want to measure, but is that feasible? Is that possible? And if not, what is it going to take to get there? And a lot of that is, conversations around data sources and systems and what's available. And then, to your point, it's also, even if the data source or system exists, it's out of our purview. So how are we pulling in other kind of stakeholders to be able to lead to that? So those are the conversations and kind of details that I'm digging into currently. And, at least within my scope, being able to share like this is an important, I find, and I recommend this as an indicator based on, all of the conversations I've had and whatnot. But as it stands, we can't do it for X, Y, and Z reasons, and kind of indicating those are the next steps or things that need to be filled. That then, takes further work that is beyond my scope in terms of actually making that happen. But yeah, those are the details I'm looking into. So thank you for that question, Deb.
Heather, go ahead.
Julia, I love this report so much, and I love this theory of change and all of the work that you've put into this. It's incredible. I think it's so clarifying to just see it so simply. And I'm sorry if you already said this, but I am really interested in the impact part of increased health and increased safety, and wondering what your process is for who gets to define what actually would be measured, if it was possible to even measure that impact as it relates to our goals here.
Yeah, definitely. Impact is a tricky one, and it's something that, in the report that I didn't get into, there's so much that goes into impact, right? Increased health and safety is very broad, and, we can't sit here and say, if health and safety go up, that was solely to do with the Justice Project, right? So to truly measure impact and tie it to the Justice Project, that is a very, very big scope of work that would require a lot of resources. So, and that I lay out in kind of more detail in terms of the considerations for an impact evaluation in the plan, in terms of, does it make sense to do we have the resources, is the juice worth the squeeze, sort of thing. In regards to defining that, we are planning on talking with I'm going to be out, but Marty and Holly have graciously agreed to facilitate in my absence, talking with J-Pop this Thursday. And one of the questions that we are hoping to get input from them on is, what does increased health mean? What does increased safety mean? And I'm open also as well to folks on this call, if you have thoughts, to share them with me, because those are very broad. So if you have thoughts, Heather, happy to connect one-on-one or via email, as I would love your inputs.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Julia? And Julia, remind us what the timing is on your finalizing your report and presenting it?
End of June.
End of June. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Julia. Really appreciate your update today. And we will move on to our next item, which is the booking restriction reduction and interim solutions conversation. There's not a whole lot planned around this except for having a robust conversation. I would like to have our Sheriff Tanksley begin this conversation. And Jill, I see that there are a number of attendees who might want to participate in this conversation. And I'm wondering, is there a way that we should identify people who want to participate and then raise them to the level of panelist?
Are you asking folks to raise their hands, our attendees to raise their hand if they want?
Yes, I guess so. For instance, Under Sheriff Harris is there, and I can well imagine that he might want to. I see Brian is raising his hand. Anyone else who's an attendee who would like to participate in this conversation be raised to the level of panelist? I see Brian and Steve have their hands up. Okay. Well, Jill, if you could take care of that, that'd be great. And Sheriff Tanksley, if you would begin this conversation, give us an update on perhaps the issue of booking restrictions in this county, and then what led to your being able to relax those restrictions, and anything else you feel like would be good ground setting for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I do want to give a history just of the booking restrictions. So I believe most people know that this particular jail was built and first occupied in 1984. And ever since then, among different administrations, there has been some sort of booking restrictions here at the jail, except the first 2 years when this jail was built and the first 2 years after the work center was built. Those booking restrictions was put in place in order to have a good grasp on the capacity of the jail. However, I don't know if a lot of people realize that our different small cities, they have jail use agreements with Whatcom County. So because of those jail use agreements, there is an expectation that the law enforcement agencies within those small cities will be able to utilize the jail based upon those jail use agreements. With the booking restrictions, that limits those jail use agreements with those, I say small cities, I'm just going to say with cities, because the city of Bellingham also has a jail use agreement. That's not a small city. So I'll just say cities. So over the years, when booking restrictions are implemented, that has a direct effect on the use of the jail for all cities, but it also has a direct effect on the communities which we serve. For example, if a person was wanted for a crime, and I just say a crime, if certain booking restrictions were in place, that person cannot be booked. It was highly suggested for misdemeanors and gross misdemeanors. that those folks would be cited and released, even for some warrants. And what happened was when COVID hit, it really exacerbated the situation, because at that point, then there were, I'm literally saying thousands of warrants here in Whatcom County. So people were committing crimes, and then those folks were not able to be booked. And then a warrant was issued. And then a lot of those people did not and still have not been to court on those warrants. So prior to me changing the booking restrictions, February 1st of this year, we were still in booking restrictions from June 13th of 2022. So we were still under COVID booking restrictions for almost 3 years. And those booking restrictions were very, very limited. But those booking restrictions were also based upon not necessarily jail capacity, but based upon charges. So there were certain charges that a person could not be booked upon. There was an exception, and the exception was for certain charges that a jurisdiction, including the county sheriff's office, could call the jail and talk to a sergeant and ask. But then we have 10 sergeants in the jail, and the honest part of that is that, you know, there isn't always consistency. And I see I have several chiefs on here that could say that depending on who answered the phone would depend on if you were able to book a person. So what I did in February of this year, I modified those booking restrictions to be based upon jail capacity and not just charges. And I worked with Whatcom, and I'm also going to say thanks to Chief Mertzik for allowing me to work with them to come up with I guess a formula to where a jurisdiction, an officer doesn't have to call the jail to see if they could book a person. It's actually part of our computer system. Our car computer system is called CAD, where they could look inside CAD to see if the jail is booking males or females at any particular time in real time. And part of this, essentially, those guidelines I put in place set forth a way that any jurisdiction at any time could see, hey, if I can book a person. But it's based upon levels. So we have a green level, a yellow level, and a red level. And even in CAD, you could see those levels directly. And those booking modifications within those levels does outline what exactly the offenses you can book a person on. So even right now, as we speak, let me look in here. Right now, for males in the jail, it's green. So that means that a jurisdiction can book on any charge. And right now for females, it's red. And the reason why it's red for females generally is because we actually have less capacity for female inmates. So that's kind of the update. And I know Under Sheriff Harris was going to give some information in terms of the numbers.
Well, that would be great. I'm also interested in any of the speakers who are interested in talking about the consequences historically of booking restrictions, just to kind of illustrate that point for folks. And Under Sheriff Harris, would you like to go next?
Hey, so one quick thing I do want to add
Oh, yeah.
is that in February of this year, when we ran the numbers, and I certainly appreciate every jurisdiction for helping us, Whatcom County, we had over, I believe, 8,500 warrants in Whatcom County for crimes. So
Meaning these are outstanding warrants for people who have, who need to appear? Is that
yes,
correct? How
yes,
do you?
yes,
Mhm.
and these were outstanding warrants. And I'll also add that when I did change these booking restrictions, the changes were not done in a vacuum. I actually met with every municipal judge in Whatcom County to have this conversation. I met with the prosecutor's office. I met and talked with the public defender's office. I talked with district court judges as well. So this process took, I guess, almost 8 months prior to the implementation in February.
Very good, thank you. Under Sheriff Harris, would you like to go next?
Sure, great, thanks. Yeah, to follow up on what Sheriff Tanksley said related to warrants, just to give you kind of a snapshot of what was happening with COVID era booking restrictions and whatnot. And the data I'm going to give you, and I can forward it to you later, is just for our Superior and District Court, which is what I have direct access to. But I'm assuming the municipalities are going to have the same type of circumstance. So back in 2020, there were 595 active felony and misdemeanor warrants in Superior and District Court. By 2025, it was 2,400 active misdemeanor and felony warrants. So what remains stable is the number of warrants that were being issued were around 11 or 1,200 per year. But what you're seeing is an astronomical level of outstanding warrants that just kept rising every single year with the limited ability to actually take care of those warrants for the failure to appears and whatnot. So I will say that even with the loosening of restrictions in February, our average daily population numbers have remained pretty stable, right around, for example, in 2023, our average daily population from February to date was 315. In 2024, it was 306. And now in 2025, it's 315. So what we're seeing is, although we're booking more persons, and I'll give you those numbers in a second, we're actually also releasing almost an equivalent number of persons every day. So the one effect of that we've seen in our municipal courts and our district courts and our superior courts is a rapid influx in the number of cases that they're actually seeing on a daily basis and causing the calendars to go longer. But the benefit of that is we're actually clearing the backlog of all these warrants to get out of the system. So that is a positive effect. As far as actual booking numbers and the increases that we've seen, in February of 2024, there were 315 individual bookings into the jail. In February 2025, there were 444. So that's a difference of 129 bookings increased, which is about 4.5 to 5 bookings per day increase. In March, it was 456 versus 2024, 378. And then in 2025, it was 477. I'm sorry, for April was 477 versus 339. So on average, it's about 3 more bookings per day since the loosening of restrictions. And please don't write this down. I can provide you guys a link to the data so you can all see it. So that gives you a general snapshot of what's occurring. If there's any specific questions on data, I can try to answer the questions for you.
Very good. Who would like to go next? Maya, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. So I pulled our attorneys just to kind of get some comments to share with you. And we're seeing a lot of bookings for driving license suspended third, no valid operator's license, trip permits. These are offenses that I think require arrest, but that's clogging a lot of the calendars and probably at least probably a fair part of what's bumping up these booking numbers. I'm not sure. I don't know if the undersheriff is able to break things out by offense types because, arrests on serious or violent or domestic violence offenses is one thing, but when we're talking about arresting people for driving license suspended third, that's a different matter. And is that really what we want to be doing? Our lawyers find that people are discouraged from coming to quash warrants because they have warrants in more than one jurisdiction and they can't quash them all at once. So they'll go to jail even if they're doing the right thing. If they show up to district court to quash that district court warrant, well, guess what? You're going to jail because you've got a municipal warrant out of Ferndale or you've got a municipal warrant out of Bellingham. So it puts people in a terrible position where they can't do the right thing because there's no way to universally quash when they appear. There are discrepancies in bail setting between district and superior court. We'll see clients who aren't held on felony matters, but are held on bail on misdemeanor matters. So there's not, and those are different courts and they're using their judicial discretion, but we're seeing like higher bails in district court than we are in superior court in some instances. As was noted, I think the jail calendars are taking a lot longer for district court. The jail has talked about the impact of that, and certainly our lawyers are seeing that. Book and release warrants are not a bad thing for the types of cases that I discussed earlier, those kind of driving cases. And there was a sort of side comment about, I know the jail has been making efforts to book on DOC warrants, but I had someone as recently as the beginning of April who wasn't booked on the DOC warrant, and when his underlying local charge was dismissed, completely dismissed, then he got picked up on the DOC warrant and got no credit for that time, the 2 months that he spent in jail, and ended up having to get shipped to Monroe for a DOC sanction. So that is not the best. So those were sort of the collection of comments that I'd share from my staff. Happy to discuss all of this further.
Thank you for bringing those forward, Maya. And would someone like to respond to Maya's questions or comments before we move on to Hannah and Dan?
Yeah, well, I'll just respond to I don't think it was a question, it was more of a statement about some of those charges. And I think some of those cases, I would assume, are very situational. So I can't say that, if a person was booked on that charge, without seeing the case, were there other charges associated? Was this a case where there was an original charge associated with that? So the possibilities are there. So I think it's very, very situational as we talk about these charges. I think we would have to, do a deep dive to see if these are individual charges or a collective of charges. So
thanks, Tank. And I think that maybe what we would propose as a solution to that is that there continue to be booking restriction on standalone DWLS thirds, no vols, trip permits. Like that would sort of clear out that category of, if that's all that they have, don't book on that. If there are other, if there's a resisting arrest or like some other thing attached, then that's a different consideration. But I think even if we just looked only at that class of driving related status offenses, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Maya, if I could ask a question on these traffic offenses, the suspendeds, the trip permits, are those from bookings from warrants for those charges, or is that new probable cause they're booking the date of the violation?
Probably warrants. I don't have numbers, but probably warrants.
Yeah, I would assume it'd be rare to book on probable cause for
Right.
those violations.
Agree. I agree with that.
So what we're finding is people are given court dates and orders to come before the court, and they're ignoring those orders with
Yeah.
those
Well,
citations.
as I discussed, it gets complicated if they have if they miss one, then the cascade effect starts, because if you miss one, then you can't show up to the next one because they'll arrest you at the next one. So then, you know, it is there isn't a way to quash all your warrants locally, and it creates this situation where you can't come in and quash because you're just going to end up arrested anyway. And so it isn't inspire people to come take care of their warrants. So I understand what you're saying. People do miss court. It happens. Sometimes it's life effects, sometimes it's intentional. But there really isn't a good way to fix it once someone is caught in that cycle, except for arrest. And incarcerating people on these driving status offenses just should not be a priority, in my opinion.
All right, thank you so much. Hannah Sloan.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. Let me pull up my data. So from the mental health providers in the jail, from what we've been seeing, on average for bookings of individuals with serious mental illness, we have seen an increase of about 20 more individuals with serious mental illness per month, compared to all of last year, or the 4 months preceding the booking restrictions being lifted. So it's a pretty significant amount. It's about double what we were seeing per month of individuals with SMI, serious mental illness. And we are also serving 30 more individuals per month on average than we were previously, and providing 100 more services per month. So our team has been very, very busy the first part of 2025. I think things are kind of settling down a little bit and we're getting used to it, but with the only 3 individuals providing assessments and interventions in the jail, it's been pretty difficult for us to kind of stay on top of things and be proactive in our responses, because we're just reacting to everything that's coming into us.
Thank you, Hannah. Before we go on to Dan, does anybody have a question or a response to what Hannah said? Okay, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I've got a few things, but I'll make it quick. So my understanding is that DWLS 3 as a standalone was not a priority from the prosecutor's office. And that was settled years ago. That was my understanding. If that's not the case, then I'd like to have some more information on that. And I understand that the like aggregated charges along with other stuff, if there was resisting in there, that I totally get that. But I'd like to just get clarity on standalone DWLS 3. The item that Maya brought up about the quashing of warrants could be solved by a portability court, a court that has jurisdiction and multiple authorities, and we just apparently we don't have that at this point. That would help a lot, I think, with clearing calendars. And then my question to Sheriff Tank or to Under Sheriff Harris is, my understanding from the jail chief Erickson is that the census at the work center is about 100 individuals out of a population capacity of 148. And so I'm just wondering, I would assume it's prioritization when it comes to, you know, categorizing, you know, what the charges were and such as to why a person could or could not go there. Just wanted to get some clarity so I can explain to folks that question comes up periodically.
Before we move on to the next person, Raylene, I'm wondering if there's anybody here from the prosecutor's office, anyone from courts who might want to respond to Dan's questions and statements. Not seeing any new hands go up. Okay.
Tammy Vanna just put her hand up. She's in courts.
Oh, Tammy, hi.
Hi.
Please go ahead.
Well, I don't have questions or anything. for what Dan said. You know, we do have 2 warrant quash calendars per week at the municipal court. I don't know what other judges' standards are when they have individuals that are before them with other courts' warrants, but I know our judges will look to see if they've had contact with the other courts so they don't act upon their warrants. For the driving thirds, you know, it has been a not a priority of our prosecutors to actively pursue those charges as they did in the past. We've been seeing such a much lower number of those being charged within the court. And a lot of times when people are picked up on those warrants, it might be because they have, you know, we have some people that'll be booked on 10 warrants for driving thirds because they just never come to court because over the past few years with the booking restrictions, they knew they wouldn't go to jail. Once they do come before the court, you know, they evaluate, they're going to give them a chance to show up out of custody and they're PR'd. But also, if they have that many charges pending of the same thing, it eventually is looked at. If you're not going to show up, what do we do with you? Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you, Tammy.
Maya,
And Maya, yes, Maya, go ahead.
Just Tammy, I have a question because I recently was dealing with an individual who had the court, I don't know if it was district or superior, I can't recall, but we were actively working with this person. They missed their municipal court date, but we talked with them the next day and they were like, I missed it. And we contacted the defender for municipal court and he told us it would be 6 weeks before we could get them on a quash calendar. So I appreciate that you have 2 quash calendars, but if someone has to wait 6 weeks before they can get on it, then maybe I don't know. I am curious. It seems to me like that doesn't seem very timely. Is that true? Because I suspect it's true because he said it multiple times to me when I was like agog that it would take 6 weeks to quash a warrant. But
at times it does, you know, as all courts are right now, we have such a backload and we're setting as many hearings as we possibly can. And sometimes it is if they call us and we know that they're going to be losing housing, programming, we will get them in sooner. But at times, yes.
Very good, thank you. Raylene, go ahead.
Thank you. So a couple comments in reference to Maya's thoughts and some of the other people that have spoken. So just so you have a little bit of background on this, Dan, you were talking about how people were responding to driving while license suspended. So in 2012, there was an old case, Redmond versus Moore, that actually wiped out DWS thirds for most of the county, most of the state, and changed responses. And then back in, I believe, about 2023, the response for speeding infractions and cases that actually caused suspensions changed again. So it used to be you had 15 days to respond to infraction. Now you have 30 days to respond to infractions. Moving versus non-moving violations also changed the requirements for driving while license suspended. So it used to be that if you had an expired tab ticket, that could actually suspend your license, and that's not the case anymore. Now it's got to be a moving violation that would cause a driving while license suspended in the 3rd degree. Also, if an individual gets a citation now, a civil infraction that causes them to have to respond, you got that 30 days to respond. And then on top of that, you also have a new response. If you look at a basic blank infraction, it has 4 options instead of 3. And the one says, I have the inability to pay this infraction. So there's a lot more steps that the state has done in changing the laws for driving while license suspended. It does still cause problems for some people, especially if they've been driving to work throughout the county and they get stopped in Everson and Ferndale and Blaine. They might get 3 tickets. They have to respond to all 3 tickets in order to get those. So I do know in the past, muni courts would work hard on trying to get people in. When I saw people booked, it was usually because they had multiple warrants for driving a license suspended in the 3rd degree, sometimes multiple agencies. A lot of times that was also combined with other charges like driving without ignition interlock devices. So I didn't usually see the bookings for just one thing. And then on Friday, there was a meeting with a lot of criminal justice partners in reference to trying to figure out what we can do to make it easier and more efficient for people that are going through the court system and through the jail and transport staff. And in that meeting, I spoke with Commissioner Parise at the end of the meeting, and he says, you know, we're actually finally seeing defendants show up to court because they know that they might get picked up. So he said it was nice to actually see that we're not issuing as many warrants. Now, I don't have the numbers for all of the district court warrants, but I can just say that he said that he noticed a definite change in that. From Superior Court's perspective, I looked at the filings from last year to this year. We're right on track. We've increased filings a little bit in the criminal entity. We're at about 125 a month. We have surpassed Snohomish County in criminal filings for Superior Court already this year. So that was something to take note because they are a little bit bigger than us. But the other thing that we also see is the more people that are going to court, the more people that are being booked, there's more need for interpreters. And when we have need for interpreters, so does all of the other municipalities, all the district courts. And it's a delay if we have to do interpreters by phone, or if we have to do it by Zoom. It's much easier to have interpreters in person. But when we're competing with Skagit County and Whatcom County courts, all of us all need those same interpreters, then the court hearings do take a little bit longer when you're dealing with that. So with that, I can say for Superior Court, we have seen an increase in overtime because our first appearance calendars that start at 3 o'clock don't always start at 3 o'clock. Sometimes they're starting at 3:30. Sometimes they're starting at 4. My clerks are supposed to be out of there at 4:30. And now I've seen them stay as late as 7 o'clock at night. That's a problem. So we're looking at the shifts and how we can change some of that and what we can do with our other partners to try to work on that. But all of those things are impacted by the jail restrictions. Now, I'm not saying not having jail restrictions. I'm kind of happy that they're not there because I do see there's actually more of a deterrent for people to actually come to court and resolve their matters when there are people actually being booked and picked up. But it does impact all of the courts because there's only one courtroom in the jail, and we all have to use that same courtroom. And so the transport deputies are strained and the clerks are strained and defense counsel and prosecution, everybody has to stay late when those appearances go longer. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Raylene, thank you so much for that. And Heather, go ahead.
Okay, I have a few thoughts to add. The first is I just want to make sure I heard right. Did you, Sheriff Tank, say there's 8,500 active open warrants right now?
I know in February of this year, it was between 8,000 and 9,000 active warrants throughout the entire county.
Okay. Gosh, this whole discussion makes me really wish we had better data, of course, because it'd be nice to know, like, what are the charges? Are they, how many actually are BWLS 3 versus other warrants out there? And I was looking up some of the crime rates for Whatcom County because in my head I was thinking, well, if there's like maybe the whole warrant system actually needs to be rethought and Because if the warrants are increasing, you would expect potentially crime rates to increase as well. And when you look at our Whatcom County, because people are out, right, and they're not in getting processed and all that, our Whatcom County crime stats from 2000 to 2024, or 2020 to 2024 on the Whatcom County website, it looks like all of them have pretty much gone down since 2020, the crime rates. Vehicle prowls, right? In 2022, we had 617, and in 2023, it dropped to 211. Theft is looking like it's continuing to drop. Aggravated assault is steady, it looks like. Robbery's dropping though. Assault is steady, unfortunately. But the theft and the burglary and the vandalism all is going down. Does that sound right to the people in law enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely that
Okay.
certain categories of crimes have went down, although other categories tends to ebb and flow. But I do want to comment about the warrants. So the sheriff's office, we only have the ability to take a look at district and superior court. So all the other municipalities, our system doesn't let us tap into each different city system to see how many warrants they have and how many warrants that they have processed. So we actually have to reach out to those different courts individually to find out that information and then collate all that information together. So in terms of just having a one-stop shop, that part is decentralized. But I do also want to talk about that jail use agreement again. So because of those jail use agreements, the different city law enforcement agencies, it's their determination when they book a person and when they don't book a person. As the sheriff, it's my goal, as I did to modify those booking restrictions in February, to let the different law enforcement agencies make that determination themselves. But with ultra restricted booking restrictions, then that determination or giving them that latitude is definitely reduced. So I do believe that by changing these booking restrictions, it does allow those different law enforcement agencies to make that determination.
Yeah, my understanding, it seems like when the booking restrictions are lifted, the morale of law enforcement generally also goes up because they have that tool still out in the field, right? To have a consequence for people.
Well, that might be true to some extent, but I think the morale of the community goes up as well, because if you're a victim of a crime and then that person is cited and released after they just literally, busted 3 of your windows at your apartment, and then that person walks down the street, and then I recall a situation 2 years ago where a person was booked on a different charge, released, and then just around the corner from here, here in the city of Bellingham, went and vandalized someone's house within 10 minutes of that person being released. So I think there's a opportunity to, let the community know that if they're a victim of a crime, that people are being held accountable. But also with the accountability piece, we also want to try to reintegrate people as well. So that's something that we hadn't talked about, is the reintegration piece, but certainly it's there.
Yeah, thank you. A couple more thoughts too I wanted to add for the Maya, for your I'm grateful for the information you're sharing and the complications of not having all systems being able to coordinate a warrant quash day. Would that be possible though? Are there, who would be the players that would make the decisions to get a coordinated quash day so that you could come and get them all quashed?
I think a quash day is one thing, but having something that's more regular and consistent is probably more usable for the community. I think in the meeting Raylene referred to the other day, there was discussion about, couldn't we have first appearance calendar that handled district and municipal courts at the same time. And I think that Dan maybe mentioned the possibility of some kind of legal mechanism to allow that kind of thing. I mean, 6 weeks to quash a warrant, and I don't know how long it takes to quash a warrant in Ferndale or any of the other municipal courts, but I mean, 6 weeks in Bellingham is too long. So I mean, a quash day is one thing, but that requires the public to conform to the court schedule. I think, so, I mean, that's, yes,
Okay.
maybe some people could use that, for sure, but I don't know that that's a really sustained solution. And so who needs to be involved? Prosecutors and judges.
Okay. I wonder too if there's appetite at the task force related to the fact that we're incarceration prevention and reduction at this table, and related to one of our top 3 goals this year of evaluating diversion programs. If DWS 3 is a charge worth having a separate robust discussion about, because there's also a lot of racial disparities associated often with that charge. And it'd be good to know how many numbers there are, and are there better diversion opportunities versus booking or et cetera. And so that's potentially an idea for a different discussion. I know that it's related to booking restrictions, but a slightly different topic. And similar to some of the information that I think Hannah was sharing about the increase in the seriously mentally ill in the jail, and wondering about if there's a separate place, maybe the Behavioral Health Committee, Dan, you'd be willing to take up understanding what are the charges associated with SMI clients? And are there, are our diversion programs able to serve them or not? And if not, is there anything that could, especially as all of that information will relate to what is being designed with this behavioral care center, and making sure that we will be able to serve the population for the next 100 years. So those would be my additional thoughts.
All right, thank you, Heather. I was really struck with Hannah's statement about the increase in SMIs, and want to hear details about that as well. And also, I would encourage everybody to turn their thoughts to how our discussion today affects and can influence the process we're going through right now with designing the new jail and behavioral care center. Raylene, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention, as Tank was pulling numbers, I pulled numbers back in June for all of the jurisdictions on active warrants in 2024. And then I pulled the numbers again in April. And currently in April, the warrants across all jurisdiction was 8,185 warrants. And out of that, we went down by about 100 warrants overall. So warrants have decreased in the last several months in comparison to last year. And I can tell you, I think Jake will be able to talk more. They did a warrant quash day. Like Blaine has court every week, and they were able to do warrant quashes weekly. But when you have courts that don't have court weekly, I think Linden is bi-weekly, and Sumas and Everson are bi-weekly. So you're not going to be able to quash a warrant except for every other week. There has been some changes on that, depending on who the judge is. So if you had a warrant in Sumas and you had a warrant in Everson, and then you went to court in Blaine, you would have the same judge. So I have seen some overlapping in changes with warrants there. I think Ferndale is every week, but their court, and so is Linden's court, their main office and their court are in 2 different locations. So they wouldn't necessarily have the files if you showed up on a Friday to their normal court date in Ferndale. You can't guarantee that they have the file to deal with that warrant. They may set you over another week. So there's some issues with if you don't have everything in the same location. Some things are changing now as a lot of courts are going paperless to make it easier, but But that is a little bit of an issue when papers in one place and the defendants in another place. So
Thank you, Raylene, for illustrating some of the complexities of the system that we're up against. I'm going to skip over to Jake first, and then go to Dan, and then Maya.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll just follow up a little bit with Raylene there. Because our probation department here in district court does provide services for Blaine, Lennon, Everson, and Sumas, and we frequently see those notices come up. You know, if an individual calls a court and wants that quashed, that those are heard the next available calendar, to my knowledge. And so we are in preparation for those when we go to those hearings, taking those files out with us to make sure that we can address those warrants and make sure that any conditions of release are also brought to the court, and those are addressed so that the individual can move forward with their case. You know, we have here in district court, in anticipation of these booking restrictions, we offered 2 quash warrant days prior to the restrictions lifted, and then 1 after. We saw some moderate success with that, but more intentionally with that, we, on our advertisement and the push in the community, whether the radio or news, whatever, or just to make known that individuals can contact a court any Tuesday through Friday here at district court and have their warrant heard and quashed. So, you know, that was, though we didn't see the numbers we were hoping for, like, we were really hoping, though, just that the community knows that for district court, they can come across and get those warrants heard, even if there isn't a event for a warrant quash. So just a perspective there. Thanks.
Thank you. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Just in response to Heather's questions and comments, there's an active team of the behavioral health committee that's working on Division Street facilities, and so we're actively talking about it when it comes to the 23-hour behavioral health center, and we'll have recommendations hopefully soon. But obviously it'll take us just a little bit. And then in response to SMI questions, and I would categorize that broadly with behavioral health to include SUD issues as well. The lead program is at capacity. I think they're at like 140 right now when it comes to the amount of clients that they can work with and manage. And their success rates, while they're very high, they're kind of getting tapped out. We're seeing the same thing with community paramedic and GRACE program. Those 2 they co-respond, and then there's a GRACE program manager with the Bellingham Police Department. What's discouraging is that while those programs are at capacity, we have a new program here, the Dijwalik clinic, that is the mobile medical unit at 2030 Division Street, and they are far under capacity when it comes to treatment for folks with substance use disorder. And people can also get additional treatment, and they will literally put the person on a shuttle and drive them to their main clinic outside of Anacortes to provide medical, dental, mental health, NA, other counseling services, and they provide childcare. That is absolutely not being utilized in full capacity. So we've got these very uneven programs where one is at 1 or 2 or 3 are at capacity, and then one is not. So would just encourage folks to be aware of Dijwalik and what they can do, and just be aware of the limitations when it comes to the other programs that we've stood up over the years, and they're just operating at a high level of capacity. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. I'd like to give an opportunity to Chief Mertzig. Oh, hold on one second. Maya, yes.
Sorry, I wanted to share, I asked one of our staff to tell me how many standalone driving license suspended third cases there were. Like, I don't know if they're standalone, but the DWLS third was the primary charge that we got in 2024, and she said 209. So that, just to let you, as an example of, I think that's a good number. I think that's an accurate number. It's not a good number, but it's an accurate number of how many in 2024. Thanks, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Chief Mertzig or Mayor Lund, or both of you, would you like to say anything from the city's perspective around the subjects we're covering today?
I'll let the boss go first.
Mayor Lund?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Um, I don't, I think it's been helpful for some of the impactful crime that we haven't been able to book for historically. I've been receiving feedback from the community expressing gratitude about the ability for, especially for property crime, for us to be able to take action on that when action hasn't been possible in the past. I would also say that our cost to book, though, however, are up. And it's something that we need to be mindful of with our budget constraints right now. So I think it's not that we want to make sure we're always taking action for the most impactful crime in the community, and we have that obligation, and we will always prioritize, regardless of the cost, to take those actions. But I would just say from a budget perspective, that's another factor that we haven't really talked about today, about the impacts on municipal budgets for taking these actions. So I think we want to make sure that we're being mindful for the costs to the community overall, and part of those are taxpayer dollars.
Thank you, Mayor Lund. Chief Mertzig, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I'm kind of just reflecting on the discussion. I think there's a certain level of social conditioning that needs to occur in our county because, I mean, I came from a jurisdiction where there were 0 booking restrictions, and I came into one where there's been booking restrictions since inception, minus 4 years. So a couple of things. So anecdotally, there's definitely cases and instances where booking restrictions have made our community less safe. There was a case in 2022 where a subject burglarized a gas station and within hours committed 2 other residential burglaries. So it does have a real impact on victims. I'm also, I kind of got into the weeds on pulling crime statistics. So while it kind of depends on what numbers you're looking for or looking at, but our number of arrests has steadily increased over the last 3 years. In 2022, we arrested 2,000 people about, and I'm sorry, let me go back. 2021, 1,600, 2022, 2,000, and then in 2023, 3,373. So I definitely think I'm not, like I said, that's city of Bellingham, and the way those numbers are counted are through the NIBR system. So yeah, it kind of depends on what crime you're talking about. If you're talking about increases or decreases, but I definitely think that, there's a real level of victimization that's occurring as well when there's no accountability. And I think, like I said, that social conditioning part of it, of we've had officers contact people and they're telling our officers, I know you can't book me. And so I think once there's a little bit of a sense of that's not true, that maybe we'll see probably, hopefully, a little bit less things going to warrant, because there is a sense of, well, actually, I'm going to be held accountable for that. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there others who would like to reflect on what we're hearing today? Any further questions or statements? It's been a good discussion. Yes, Heather.
One last thing. In Philadelphia, there's a prosecutor, Larry Krasner, who in 2018 asked his prosecutors to, I'm responding to Mayor Lon's comment about budget, asked the prosecutors to list out how much it will cost to put this person through the system with the charges associated. And in Philadelphia, anyway, it was, to put somebody in jail for a year or a certain amount of time, they had these calculations, right? It could be $60,000 or more of tax dollars going to that jail. And I would love to see a project around that with the cost. What is the cost savings if there's a successful diversion? Is it cheaper to divert somebody? Is it more expensive to put them in jail or cheaper? How do we quantify the dollars on the public safety side? Because yes, the victims are like the most important, and that's pretty unquantifiable, but I just wanted to share that there are methods out there for looking at it from a cost benefit analysis as well.
I love that, Heather. Thanks for sharing that.
I'll forward some links to you and Jill if people are interested.
Are there any thoughts on next steps? How we can improve our situation in the subject area we're talking about? It would be a good idea for us to summarize what we've heard here and try to do something with it to improve our outcomes. So, Bertie, go ahead.
My question is kind of for everyone who's been commenting, who's in the system. Is there a sense that we are playing catch up with a backlog, and if we could fast forward the system, things would be back to a lower level and a more, quote, manageable level? Or is this more the new reality with that large number of warrants?
Would somebody like to respond to Bertie's question, and then we'll get to Raylene?
Well, I do think since COVID, it was a tremendous backlog. And by having conversations with different judges here, certainly I think they're making good headway. And I know we have some court personnel that probably could talk to that better than I can. But I also want to talk about the fact of the victimization, that it's a lot of folks that were repeatedly being victimized. And I think it's important to know that that we think about the victims, but also the inmates. You know, what's the root causes of some of this criminality? You know, so we also have to think about that too. And earlier, when we're talking about driver's license suspended third, I mean, we have to bring all the municipal courts into this, the municipal judges. I mean, this is a big conversation, bigger than just Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and all the different cities. So I think as a county, I think we're doing good work. But yes, I do think we're playing catch up. But also, we have to, always think about those victims and think about even the inmates and the suspects. How do we prevent crime? So that's the goal, is to prevent crime from it happening in the first place. Thank you.
Very good. And we've got 5 more minutes. So Raylene and then Heather.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it real quick. So last week, Friday, I want to say there was between 35 to 40 people at the Garden Center room. This included judges from all jurisdictions, defense counsel, prosecution, court administrators, jail staff, to work smarter, not harder. Try to come together with different ideas on what we can do to streamline some processes, issues that we're having, problems that we're having, what we can prioritize, what's realistic and what's not realistic, and what stuff will possibly carry over that we need to bring back to the JPOP team to say, hey, these are some problems that we're seeing. So this was the first meeting that we've had. We intend to do it again, but it's making sure that we have a succinct agenda and we know what we need to look at moving forward. But everybody that was in that room was willing to come up with thoughts and plans and what's doable, what's legal, what we can't do. And so I felt like that was a start Whether or not we're going to be able to get rid of all the backlog, you know, we're growing here in Whatcom County. And we're running trials nonstop. We're having 3 to 4 trials at a time in Superior Court. I know District Court has been running trials, and I think we're running at capacity right now. So whether or not we're going to be able to clear the backlog anytime soon, I can't answer that.
Very good, Raylene. Thank you. And Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, so I appreciated Heather's comment a minute ago about cost, which is very important to me. And if it's cost effective, which just pivots to, we need data. And I'm just going to harp on it one more time. We need data to understand which of these programs are working and which aren't. And I pivot back to the last meeting where I think it was either Compass Health or Pioneer Human Services. One of them said they had 52 people running their 16-bed facility. And if I just use round numbers, 100,000 per person to hire, that's 5.2 million to take care of 16 people. That's $325,000 per person. Now they're not there all year, but it puts it in perspective for me that these programs aren't cheap either. And so I want to divert people from jail. I don't want people that don't need to be there, but we need data and cost associated with these programs so we know where to go.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. Heather, go ahead.
I love that, Mayor Cortice, and it's directly related to some of the top goals of the Incarceration Task Force this year: data, evaluating diversion programs. If I were to summarize, Peter, just for the good of the order, I think Maya, you had some really great just inquiries that would be good to kind of turn the rocks over and say, how can we be helpful here? I think following up on the DWS 3 sounds like a really good conversation. Maybe our legal subcommittee could take that on, or we could talk about that at steering potentially. The SMI charges and related supports for that, and is on the list. And I really want to also just say, I don't know if we said this yet, but thank you, Sheriff Tank, for all of your incredible leadership and work to help reduce those booking restrictions. That was such a hard thing for our community for many years. I'm so grateful that people are bringing up at this table the impact on victims. And I know that you started from kind of negative at the jail when you started, and you are doing an exceptional job. And I would love to request that if there are circumstances that start to make booking restrictions feel like they need to come back, that I know our whole task force, I think, wants to be a supportive partner to you in whatever way, if it's brainstorming or, you know, what isn't working, what is working, because I know that that's not effective for our community to have those restrictions. And so, and I think that would be, so thank you. And that's all I have on my summary for what could be next, but there might be other things too. So.
Very good. And Melora, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, just for the group and for the record, Mayor Cortice, I appreciate your comments about Compass and Pioneer. I think it's just really good that this group remembers that the county and the cities do not pay for in any direct way for the operations at the Crisis Stabilization Center. So it would be really interesting to have Compass and Pioneer provide more details on their budget, but that's paid for through Medicaid reimbursement and through a contract with the North Sound Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization. Our commitment as a community is that we provide a lease to them, and a rent amount that greatly assists with them being able to keep keep operations fully floated at that facility. So just for the group to understand that we as a community are not paying for the services at that 24/7 facility.
All right, thank you for that perspective, Melora. And thank you to everybody who participated in this important conversation. One of the things that IPRTF can do well is to provide a container or space for multidisciplinary conversations of this sort. And then it's incumbent upon us to follow the questions and concerns and complexities through to solutions. All right. And without further ado, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, Medicare is tax paid, and so are the other ones. We're paying one way or another, but not locally paying. I understand, but we're still paying.
Yes, we get a little confused on that specific
Yeah,
facility, so just wanted to clarify.
Thanks.
And on that subject, I'd like to say that we will be having an upcoming session, not unlike this, around financing and finances that I believe that Kayla is going to help us with, so that we understand the scope of where money is coming from and going to in the areas we're talking about. All right. Without further ado, let's move on to items 5, 6, and we're going to drop 7 for today because 5 and 6 are so related. So, and Marty, Holly, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I am going to share screen here and jump in on talking about the materials that were in your packet. And it was a lot of reading. I hope you were at least able to browse these documents. They are the IPRTF's annual report, and for this year, for the first time, it includes a Justice Project Implementation Plan Progress Report. And then you also had a draft IPRTF action plan. I think this is our process of producing these documents. And the main thing I want to point out here is highlighted that this is where we are right now. You have this chance to review these drafts, and we need all your feedback in one form or another by Friday. That will enable us Crossroads folks to produce final drafts, provide them to the steering committee on time for their next meeting, and then we'll do edits and they will go to you for approval at the June 16th meeting. And you'll have a window to review those before the meeting. After that, they go to, there will be a presentation to council, and the implementation plan progress report will be presented to the Finance and Facility Advisory Board, FAB. So just today, we're going to do a little bit of gathering your verbal feedback on first the annual report and implementation plan progress report, which are in a combined document, and then we'll go to the action plan. This IPRTF annual report is really 2 reports in one. So it's these 2 pieces I've just mentioned. And the difference between them is that it's kind of in the timeline. So the annual report focuses specifically on IPRTF activities, and it covers this past year through June. So this annual report has been happening annually for quite a long time. And this one builds on the year-end report, which is like a halfway through the year report that you approved in December. So we're covering the full year, building on what was already reported. That was July through December. The implementation plan progress report draws on the quarterly reports that the executive's office produces. Thank you, Kayla. And it focuses on the progress made on the 15 implementation plan projects. And for this year, our first year doing this, the timeframe is going to be November through this year, through this fiscal year, so through May. After this, the report will go on an annual basis, just like the IPRTF annual report moving forward. So first of all, we're going to look just at that document with the two parts and ask you these questions. I'm going to turn it over to Holly now.
Okay, so the questions for today for the IPRTF annual report and the Justice Project Implementation Plan Progress Report are, is any critical information missing? Is anything in these reports inaccurate or irrelevant? Just seems like it shouldn't be there. And is anything not clear? So as Marty mentioned, we have a little bit of time today to flag things, and also we're going to have Jill send out a doc version so that you can also just do a track change and send it back to us. Again, it needs to be back by Friday. So we can take off the screen for a minute, Marty, and then the floor is open. So after we look at this report, then we'll look at the action plan, right? So right now we're just working on the reports that we have to present to council. So did you get a chance to look at it? Any anything you caught? Any feedback on this? Okay.
I've seen an earlier version of this, and I believe I gave you all my comments at that time.
I'll add that you also suggested that the whole thing could be a little bit more user-friendly. What we're going to do is create an executive summary document that is more user-friendly and that summarizes what's in the whole document. And that is the piece that we will work on once we have your feedback on the content. We just want to make sure the content that we're working with is accurate and clear, and before we move into summarizing it for the masses.
Very good.
Right.
Okay, should we move on to the action plan?
So
sure.
Hopefully it's working for you. And I want to give a hats off to Jill, who did this work before, and we really followed in her footsteps and got a lot of coaching from her. So that it's a hunk of work, these annual reports you guys all do every year. So yay for Jill. Thanks for the honor of getting to work on this with you all. It's interesting stuff for sure. So I think Peter's suggestion about having a user-friendly or more, a version of it that's shorter that the public can also be, kind of tune into the channel will be great.
And
Okay.
hats off to Jennifer Moon, right?
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah, Jennifer Moon has been working with us on the IPRTF action plan section, and she'll help us produce that executive summary as well. And we're very lucky to have her with us on this.
So again, if you have comments that you didn't get a chance to, look at it fully, I know Scott, you had said you'd like a little more time with it. Jill will send out the doc version and then just send any feedback to Marty. Okay, let's do the action plan then. So slideshow goes back up. So in this section, we're moving on to the next agenda item, and this is for the IPRTF's action plan and calendar. So this is the first time that you all have done an action plan, at least in my memory. And this was really, if you remember, at the inspiration of our co-chairs of Heather and Peter to really try and line up the expanded role of the IPRTF relative to the Justice Project Implementation Plan, and also just really try and get more, I guess, more potency, making sure that we're swimming in the same direction and that we have more effectiveness in our work. So the action plan contents, they describe our planning process, which again was new this year. Describes the action plans relative to the 4 committees, And then it describes how the planning process will conceptually continue into the future. Because this was the year we kind of had to figure out how to make this work, and we learned a lot. So that's where we're at next. This thing about the planning process, this must be the third or fourth version of this. So this is different than in your doc, and it's still a work in progress. We'll keep tweaking this. But basically, you know, good planning is not a document. Good planning is a process. So that's what we're trying to do, is develop a process that makes sense, that we do every year, that we can, you know, just keep rolling this forward. Most important thing is that we're trying to both plan for the IPRTF, for the committees, and then get these progress reports so that we can also be sharing our progress and learning from them as we go forward. The other really important thing that we put into place this year was this calendar, so that we have a sense of, okay, let's get ahead of the curve. What are we going to talk about? How does it fit with our priorities? And making sure that our presenters, the people that we ask to come to the IPRTF, are given enough time to present. So that's that planning process. So same kinds of questions, any critical information missing from the action plan, anything that seems inaccurate or irrelevant. Especially we had to do some, and hats off to Marty for just trying to track down all the stuff from the committees, you know, pulling that together. So especially from your committees, and anything that is not clear. So we can take down the slide. The floor is open. Anything on the action plan? Yeah.
Just for the record, these documents are all drafts, and those action plans are drafts for the committees. I was pulling from your stuff, but I haven't gotten feedback from individual committees on that content. So you need to make sure that it suits you, you know, and at this stage in the process, you know, this would be your time to go to your committees and talk about them and just get any feedback to us so that we can make them really what you want them to be.
Yes, I'd like to encourage all of our co-chairs to do some focusing before Friday on this, and make sure that the action plan reflects your ideas, thoughts, and intentions.
Okay. So I'm going to keep moving then, because I'm not seeing any hands up, and we're going to look at the calendar, which I had up a second ago. Oh, where'd it go? Of course, now I don't have it handy. Where'd it go?
I can bring up a version here. Shall I?
Yeah, please. Nope, different. Okay. So if you remember at the last, I think it was the IPRTF meeting, it could have been the steering committee meeting. One of the changes that we made, so this is just going through, like, what are our focus topics, action items that we know we need to deal with. And Marty, if you can scroll down.
And also the, well, okay, yeah. Your charge is at the top. And
yeah, our priorities at the top. And what we added also, keep scrolling down, is remember, we're going to take y'all are going to take a summer recess in July, decided on that. And if you keep on scrolling down, we also created a space at the bottom so that as people come up,
this is not, yeah.
Oh, not it.
This is the one that was in the report. Let me just, I'm going to find the one that has the calendar at the bottom real quick here.
So what it has at the bottom is just, we started to, as people have said, oh, you know, we should talk about this, just to start adding those onto the bottom so we cannot lose that and we can remember them, and then start plugging those in as. So that was the one change we made most recently. There we go, May 1st.
And also this version, which will be in the report, lists whether something is a question, a proposal, or report to, and the stars are the things that are related to priority topics. So this is the more the calendar will be using the rather than the one that was in that draft, the draft plan.
Okay, actually, let's pause right now on the May meeting for a sec, Marty, if we could. So here we are, right? So, yep.
Yeah, so we had a report about booking restrictions, and this is the report from Julia, and then we're going to hear from Kayla as soon as we're done. And then right now, here we are with a question, gathering feedback on these documents. And you already did this revisiting the status of the Crisis Stabilization Facility Committee.
So basically, we're right on track, which is pretty cool.
Very good.
And then this bottom is, yeah, like I said, where we're starting to just flag things that when we get time, we can slot those in. So at any point during one of these meetings, you can say, hey, you know, I think at some point we should talk about this. Okay, I just know that our time is short here today. So any comments about the calendar before we shift gears? Okay. I think we're done then, Peter.
Okay, thank you so much. And we're going to need public comment at the end, but Kayla, if you could go ahead with your presentation, just leaving, 7 minutes or something, 5 minutes for public comment.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. I don't have a ton to share, or a ton of good news at least. So I mostly just wanted to leave time for questions. So I am reporting on the outcomes of the legislative session. I would say our two major asks of the legislature this year for the Justice Project were a capital contribution for the design of the behavioral care center and a significant concern and desire for a fix around the operating sustainability of the Crisis Relief Center. So first on the Behavioral Care Center, we asked, I believe, for around $800,000 of design money, and that request was not supported or advanced by the legislature, though we do thank Representative Rammel for his attempt there. Ultimately, lots of competing priorities. So we will try again next session on that, and are of course proceeding with design as planned. It just is going to come out of local sales tax budget rather than a state grant. And then on the Crisis Relief Center, I think people are aware that the reports from other facilities around the state are that the operating model has significant flaws as it relates to insurance recovery. And so we and several other jurisdictions from around the state have been really pushing the legislature to take some action on this. It sounds like this session there was a short-term sort of budget allocation for some operating support for some of the facilities that have already been built. But that doesn't really solve the long-term issue that we are concerned about on sustainability. So maybe a little hope on the horizon, but nothing that resembles a full sustainable fix. The other thing I would say is the BHASO's priority around reprocurement, which is more complicated than I'm prepared to speak to, but if there's any health department staff online, they might be able to talk about it. This is essentially how the state pays for behavioral health services through managed care. BHASO had a proposal for how this could be done differently. And that bill did pass and is on the governor's desk. I think there's a slight hope that maybe helps with some of the sustainability issues on the Crisis Relief Center. But again, it's not the full sustainable fix that we are hoping for. So more work to do as we prepare for the next legislative session, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions for Kayla? Arlene, go ahead. Your sound is off.
When is the next legislative session?
January.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's a very big delay. Yeah, this is serious. And to me, it seems like it's being treated lightly.
By who?
By the executive's office.
What makes you say that, Arlene?
Well, you're just presenting it like it was nothing, but it's something quite serious.
Yeah, I mean, I've been briefing this committee on it monthly for the last several months. So I think I'm presenting it as it's not nothing, but just not, I didn't expect this to be surprising to anybody at this point.
Raylene, go ahead.
Just a real quick comment to Arlene. I want you to know, Arlene, that there's been a lot of asks that have gone forward in this session. And a lot of things have been cut. We know the BECA funding, federal funding was cut from the budget. We know that the Blake funding was sliced in half. So we're trying to get very creative. I don't think it's just these asks. I think there's a lot of things. There's just not money there. And I think everybody really wants it to work. But, you know, I think the best we can do is keep pushing and trying for it. And I don't think the exec's office has not tried. I think it's just unfortunate that there's just no funding there right now.
All right, other questions for Kayla? Okay, well, thank you for presenting, Kayla, and I do appreciate your and your office's efforts in all of this. It was a disappointing session in many ways, but I know that we've been in discussion for a good long time, and you put things forward, and we all appreciate it. And I remain hopeful for the future. All right, let's see who is wants to make public comment. There's no one here in the conference room with me, but I do see we have 4 guests online. Would any of you like to make a public comment? Looks like not. Okay, well, with that, thank you, everyone. We're going to close out today's meeting. I sure appreciate you and all the work that you're doing in the community for us on these topics. And please reach out to Heather or me directly if you have any thoughts, ideas, or feelings on what we've covered and how the IPRTF can be helpful to you in your work or as a whole in the community. So, all right. And with that, we'll close the meeting. Thank you.